Hi friends, it's Kaylee here, and you guys have been asking me for a while to do a simple, basic, straight to the point eyeshadow tutorial. I'm not going to be showing you how to do this today, but I am going to be taking this off, starting fresh, and showing you guys how to do eyeshadow super easily, make it look nice and blended, and it doesn't really take any time at all. So let's take this off my face and get started. Okay, so now clearly my face is completely naked. I'm only going to be putting on eyeshadow for you guys because I'm actually about to go take a shower and then go to bed. But my face is completely a blank canvas. I prefer doing my eyeshadow before my eye makeup, or at least the majority of it, but you can do whatever you feel the most comfortable with. If you get any fallout underneath your eye or on your cheek, it just makes it super easy because you can just take a cotton pad and wipe it right off, and you don't have to worry about messing up your foundation or anything like that. So what we're going to do first is we're going to prime our eyelid, and then we're going to get right into it. And I'm going to tell you how I prefer to prime my eyelids. You're welcome to prime your eyelid in any way that you feel suit. You can get specifically an eyelid primer. I just use concealer and translucent powder to set. So feel free to experiment, see what works the best for your skin type, what works the best for you, but I'll show you how I prime my eyelids. For me, to prime my eyelids, I always start with a concealer. I'm going to show it to you here on our handy dandy second webcam. This is the ColourPop No Filter Concealer in the shade Fair 08. You can use whatever concealer you have on hand, whatever concealer is your favorite, but this is the one that I'm going to be using today. So I'm just going to open it right on up and apply some generously on my eyelids. This is just going to even out any discoloration that you have in your eyelids, if you have any veins, anything like that. And I'm just going to take my damp beauty sponge and just blend that out. Now some people prefer to leave their eyelids tacky. For them the pigment sticks and they have no problems blending it out. But for myself, I like to set my concealer down because I feel like if my concealer is tacky on my eyelid, then I can't really get a nice seamless blend. So now that it's blended all over my eyelid, I'm going to take my translucent powder. I personally use the Coty Airspun, just in the regular old translucent. Like I said, you're welcome to use whatever powder you have on hand, or you can even go in with a flesh toned eyeshadow and run it across your eyelid as well to set that concealer in place. So now that that's set in place, we're going to be working with 4 eyeshadow shades today. For today's look, I'm going to be using a palette that a lot of people tend to be familiar with. This is the Tartelette in Bloom eyeshadow palette by Tarte Cosmetics, and it's just a very simple, neutral eyeshadow palette. It also smells really good. So if you're looking for something on the higher end of makeup, but you're not really sure what to go for, you know, you've never really experimented with eyeshadow, you're not super comfortable with it, I highly recommend any of the Tartelette palettes, or really anything from Tarte in general. They tend to stay very neutral, very safe, so it shouldn't be anything too out of your comfort zone. So I'm going to open it up and show you. Mine's pretty well loved, so keep in mind that. So trying not to blind you here, as you can see, it's a very neutral palette. You've got a couple shimmer shades in here and then some darker smoky shades. You can do quite a bit with this palette alone. You can go really dark and smoky, or you can go very light and neutral and natural. Good for every day, or if you're just starting off with makeup. I think it's a very good beginner's eyeshadow palette. The shadows are a little bit powdery, but they're very smooth and they blend really well, and like I said, it smells really good. It smells like chocolate. So I'm going to show you how to get something super simple, super easy, with just 3 to 4 eyeshadow shades. So all you're going to really need are just 2 brushes. I have one that's a dome-shaped kind of pencil brush. It's a little bit denser. It's still pretty fluffy, so it's not going to be super harsh on the eye. But it's really good for packing some color on. And then you're going to have another brush that's a fluffy blending brush, and this is just going to help really soften out those edges, really diffuse the color and keep everything really soft and prevent anything from looking patchy or just too harsh on the eyes. So here are what these brushes look like close up. Mine are due to be washed. Really wish that camera would focus, but you get the gist of it. This one right here is much smaller, it's a little bit more dense, and then this one right here is much more fluffy and soft, so it's really good for blending out those shadows. So as you can see, I also have a second cam here showing the eyeshadow palette, but you get the general gist of where the eyeshadows are placed, what colors they are. It goes from very cool toned to very neutral to very rosy, so you have a good selection of different eyeshadow shades here. You can really play and experiment a little bit while also remaining neutral and nothing too crazy. So I'm gonna first go in with my fluffy brush here, and I'm gonna take what's called the transition shades. Now everybody applies their transition shade a little bit differently. I put my transition shade down first. Some people prefer putting on a darker shade first and then taking their transition shade and going over the edges with that. I personally feel like applying the transition shade first and then applying the darker shade over it makes it a little bit easier and a little bit smoother to blend. So I'm gonna take the shade here. I'm gonna take the shade right here. It's called Jet Setter, and it's a very light, taupey, cool toned brown. I'm gonna press my brush in it and then just tap off the excess. I do have a smaller mirror here. I take it on my fluffy brush, as you can see here, and I'm just gonna start going back and forth in my crease. I have eyelash glue in my eye still. So you're just gonna make windshield wiper motions back and forth. Now if you don't know where your crease is, take your brush, clean, and just kind of like press it in, and you'll feel where there's kind of an indentation. And it's basically like where your eyeball stops. That's where your crease is. Now I know a lot of people have hooded eyelids, so if you do have a hooded eyelid, I would like you to blend your eyeshadow up a little bit higher, just so that way when you're looking straight forward, you can still see that shade and it's not completely lost because you have hooded eyes. So we're just gonna keep going back and forth, and we're taking our time and building that transition shade to the opacity that we desire. So I keep it pretty low for the most part, and then as you know, my brush loses product, I start going a little bit higher. And I personally bring my eyeshadow pretty high. You can bring it basically to wherever you feel comfortable, whatever you feel like looks the best. Everyone has a different eye shape, so different eyeshadow styles suit different eye shapes. So I just start bringing it up, and then for my eye shape, I like to kind of wing mine out. So I kind of follow the natural angle that my eye is out, and I go to about the tail of my eyebrow. So I'd stop right about here. And you're more than welcome to experiment with different eyeshadow shapes. You can keep it very round, you can really wing it out. It all depends on the shape of your face and what you feel comfortable doing. So now that's just a really simple transition shade to start with, but that just gives you a very light, very diffused wash of color on your eyelid to prep for any darker colors that you're going to be putting down. Now this is where that denser brush comes in. I'm going to go in with this shade here. I'm going to go in with this shade right here. This shade's called Rebel, and it's a rosier brown, a little bit darker than the transition shade that we just used. Tap off the excess just a little bit, and we're going to keep it on this area of the eye right here, the outer part of the eye, and we're going to go a little bit into the crease. And this is basically going to contour your eye and just give more shape to your eyelid. So I place mine right in here like this, and I'm using pressing and packing motions for right now. We're just going to press and pack. Take your time with it. Maybe going for a little bit more. Tap it off. Press and pack. And I'm going to bring it through the crease. And now you can just keep it on the outer part of your eye here, but I like to really define my crease, so I bring mine all the way through the crease into the inner part of my eye. And now we're gonna go back with our little blending brush and we're gonna go over the edges of that color that we just placed. And we're gonna do little circular motions, windshield wiper motions. And we just wanna make sure that that edge of that shadow is completely diffused into that transition color that we just put down. Because we don't want a super harsh transition from that really light color into that deeper rosier brown. We want it to look like it's a very nice diffused gradient. Otherwise, it's, in my opinion, I don't think it's gonna look that great. You like go over those edges, and if you feel like you lost some of the depth that you really wanted there, go back in with that denser brush, go back into that shade, and just place it where you really want that depth. So I think I would like a little bit more depth right in here, right in the crease, and then go back in with your blending brush and just go over the edges. And if you feel like, you know, like, hey, that line isn't really blending out super nicely, it's kind of sticking, I can't get a smooth transition, you can take your fluffy brush, go back into that shade you use as a transition, pick up just a little bit, tap off the excess, and just go over where those two colors meet. And you'll find that it gives a much nicer, smoother diffusion if you're finding that that eyeshadow tends to be sticking. If it's clinging to like a dry patch, or maybe it's just a harder shadow to blend, just really makes it nice and airbrushed looking. So now you can stop here for depth if you really want to, you know, maybe this is enough for you, but I always like to have dark eyes. So I'm gonna go in with the darkest shade in the rosier row, and this is called Leader, and it's kind of like a dark, plummy burgundy shade. You know, go in with our dense brush, tap it off, and we're just gonna keep on the outer part of that eye. So a little bit further back from that other shade that you placed. Then take our fluffy brush. Same motion, same idea, just blending around those edges because we added that depth there for a reason. Now if you feel like it's gotten too dark, you can take the same brush and just go over it and it will soften those colors. But if you really like the depth of that shadow but just want the edges blended out, just stay along the edges of that shadow that you just placed. Now you can keep going with depth, you can keep going darker and darker and darker. I like to work with multiple shadow shades because I feel like if you just place a really, really dark eyeshadow on without any kind of transition shades and you go to blend it, it's going to be really patchy, it's going to stick to certain spots, you know, it's not going to be like super diffused and airbrushed looking. It's a lot harder to get it to a seamless blend. So I like to work kind of in stages of depth. I feel like it gives the smoothest blend effect, in my opinion. So now, you can straight up just leave it like this if you really wanted to, like this is totally acceptable. But I like to add a little pop of shimmer on the lid in that blank space that we've got going on here. So I'm just gonna take my finger, you can take a flat eyeshadow brush, but I'm gonna take my finger today, and I'm gonna go into this sparkly gold champagne shade called Lucky Girl. And I'm just gonna rub my finger right in it, just like that, and we're just gonna press it right onto the eyelid. Now we want to make sure we're pressing and not swiping, because if we're swiping we could be wiping the shimmer away, messing up the eyeshadow underneath. You want to make sure you're really pressing that shadow onto the lid. I mean, don't go like hitting yourself in the face, you know, be gentle with it. But just give it a good old-fashioned press. And then that just adds some brightness back to the lid, a little bit of sparkle, and then it's just a very like kind of soft glam neutral eyeshadow look. Now if you want to get a little bit more crazy with it, you can add some eyeshadow underneath the lower lash line. I'll show you how I do that. So I like to use two brushes. You don't have to use two brushes, you can just use one if you would like, but I like to have two brushes on hand when doing eyeshadow underneath my lash line. So I will have a much smaller, very flat, dense kind of packing brush to run underneath my lash line, and then another but slightly different shaped fluffy brush, as you can see here. Rather than it being very circular and very dome-like, this one's a little bit flatter, but it's still nice and fluffy, so it's good to blend out eyeshadow. So I'm gonna take the fluffy brush first, and I'm gonna go in with the shade that we use as our transition shade, and then just run it underneath my lower lash line. Not everybody's a fan of really bringing down the eyeshadow on their lower lash line, so make sure you experiment, see what you like on your face shape, on your eye shape, but this is how I like to do mine. And then I'll take that flatter brush that I showed you, go in with a darker shade, tap out the excess, and just kind of like press it into my lower lash line. And then take that fluffy brush again, don't put any additional product on it, and just kind of run it over the shadow that you just placed. And that's pretty much it. Then you've got a very neutral, daytime, kind of smoky eye. And you know, you can go as deep as you want, you can go as light as you want, you can use any colors that you would like. You know, it doesn't have to be this palette, it doesn't have to be these shades. But the way I would finish this off is with a little bit of line, a little bit of mascara, some highlight on the inner corner, and some highlight underneath my brow bone. But that's basically it. You can do this super quickly. You can also just use one shade. You can just use the transition shade if you would like, just to add some definition to your eye. You can use 6 different shades if you would like. It's all a matter of how dark you want to go, what shades you want to use, whatever you're feeling that day. There's no real rules to makeup, but I know a lot of people have been asking, how do I start with eyeshadow? So I hope you're able to follow along. If you have any feedback for this video, let me know down in the comments, and if there's any other tutorials you would like to see, also let me know down in the comments. Thank you for requesting this, and I hope I could be some kind of help. Bye guys!